And
Well, no,
we gotta change your verb
I
tense
think
there,
it's a
man.
good idea.
Huh? Sorry?
Eh,
You think it's a good idea?
Yes, I do.
Okay, we'll get started. Thank you everyone for coming this morning and to our delegation from the public. We'll just, where did we fit that in? Right at the beginning?
After the minutes.
After the minutes, yeah, okay. We're gonna be glad to be here at 9:30 instead of 8:30, like our last meeting.
I
It
had heart
defaults.
failure.
Sorry, your program defaults. Doesn't make any changes, it just knocks back.
Yeah.
We've had evening meetings at 8:30 in the morning.
But we do have a great set of session planning notes to just revisit and refresh our minds from our last meeting as well, so we'll get into that later. Regrets from Robin Fenton from Halifax, I think she's on the East Coast there somewhere in Nova Scotia. With that, I'll of course welcome Councillor Morris.
You're
Or
welcome.
welcome back.
Welcome back. Well, and you were before I joined the UBC. So,
Yes.
So you have that previous perspective.
First round.
And everyone else. Do we have a quorum? I guess we do, don't
We have a small committee.
we? Yeah. Right.
And Juan said she would be here, so.
Okay, so
Yes.
one's coming, great. Then additional late items. Does anyone have anything? Have you had a chance to just quickly look through the agenda?
We have two documents. One is the terms of reference as slightly revised by council at the last meeting on January 28th. We can put that in with section
Section 9.
9.
Yeah,
So
or
9.
section 10, I guess, information items.
Or 9.1, if you want to discuss the terms of reference.
Yeah, I would like to take a minute just to read them over with everyone.
Okay, so that would be on 9.1. And then these session planning notes for 7.1.
Great. Anything else that members of the committee want to discuss at this meeting? No? Okay. Then the adoption of the minutes from our January 11th meeting. We have a motion from Maureen? Yeah. And all in favor? Did you have a chance to?
Yeah.
Look at them? Great. Okay. Then on to our members of the public. Welcome. Denise has contacted us. Hi, Bon. We're just getting going. So Denise contacted us to present an idea or something that you've been working on, I guess.
Well, yeah, thank you, Rod. Welcome. Thank you for having us. My name is Denise Bouchard. For those of you I don't think I've met, I've been on board for 6 years now, and I'm sole proprietor of one trade brand and one registered trade brand called Five Blossom Gatherings and Fires of Compassion. And about actually a couple years ago, Voice America came to me and asked if I would do a 13-week podcast, and at the time I didn't feel it was my thing. It was really an exciting offer, but I was not ready for it. And then a few months ago, they came back and said, actually, we're opening up a new network. It was going to be on empowerment. It would be relative to women's issues, but specifically related to bringing a voice to the areas of art, health management, and spirituality. And so they asked if I would do a 52-week podcast, Wednesdays, noon, and it's an international network. And, it was just like, we chatted for a while, everything felt really, really, really appropriate, because I have a lot of experience in all those areas, and to act as a host, and yeah, I was just very excited about it. So I sat on it. I came through the community. I talked to a few people in the community who are representing business and stuff, and everybody was very excited about it too. So then I spoke to Cal, and he agreed to become the project manager. and talked with Jess, who's also my apprentice, and asked her whether she would be helpful with the administration, because I'm going to have product, I'm going to have classes and stuff that will come at the end of that after the first 3 months. So we thought it was very important for us to introduce ourselves to you and let you know that this is a very exciting thing for Canada, because it is going to touch the nation. It's going to touch a number of issues internationally around spirituality. And it's a big voice, and it's going to be an interesting process of building up that voice over the year. It's not going to just go wow like that. You know that. It's a slow groove, and it's to touch the areas that are needing to be voiced in a respectful and compassionate way, really, is the intention. So I'm going to pass it over to Cal, see if he has anything he wants to share with you about that.
For sure, and maybe just for, and thank you, Denise, and thanks again for having us. I think for some context, if you're not aware of Voice America, and I'm just recently aware of them, so I can speak like an expert now, but they have a very large network. I think they're actually the largest producer of podcast and online radio material on the planet. And they have different categories: a business category, health category, and an empowerment category, which is what they've asked Denise to participate in. So their audience is literally millions of people around the world. So it's a pretty exciting opportunity for Denise in particular to be invited to be a host, because it's kind of a big deal. So I'm just really happy to be part of. I'm a big fan of the work that Denise does, and I think to have one of Bowen's own have a stage of that magnitude and be able to have a voice, and we don't totally know where it's going to go yet in terms of who we can include, but I think it's an opportunity to give many people in our community a voice as well on a variety of topics. So as Denise mentioned, it's a 52-week program. First 3 months is likely just going to be her with content, but after that we'll be looking at who can we bring in for relevant guests to speak on some of these topics around spirituality, empowerment, health. So again, I think it's a great opportunity for potentially other people in our community, and again to give one of our own a great voice. So.
Super. That sounds very exciting. So I'm thinking about what you're talking about in context of the discussions that we have on an ongoing basis with the Economic Development Committee, and that is with Bowen Island and our community and how business happens here. The community economic development model, the principle, like the foundation of it, is diversity and resilience at a local or community level. Mm-hmm. And I think, to me, it's obvious anyway that spirituality or wellness, which I think would be probably the word that we've used for the health and wellness industry or sector on Bowen Island, is kind of the area that you're talking about. Does that seem?
I would say that's fair.
Yeah.
Fair?
The first 3 months are going to focus on setting up a platform that we're going to talk about the issues through. So the basics of it are green, definitely green: consciousness, compassion, and kindness, respect for everything that we're approaching. So that's going to be given in a certain way, because it's easy to talk about just like that, but when you get into the nitty-gritty of, well, how do you apply that? How do you apply that in consciousness, and how do you apply that in action? It comes down to the basic principles of any good relationship. So that's the first 3 months. Fires is more of a spiritual banner. 5 Blossom Gatherings is more of a practicality, or the way through the practice of it. And then there's the way of approach that's going to be artistic, which is our community is extremely powerful artistically. So because all of that is really creativity, it's going to give us a lot of opportunity. I mean, I just see it as an open field.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I think, sort of back to your point, Rod, I think yes, if you're looking for an umbrella, I think wellness definitely captures that.
Yeah. Have you reached out to other wellness organizations and practitioners on the island?
No. I haven't done anything specifically right now, because the point is that the platform needs to be set in a way that it can be presented properly to them. Everybody has their viewpoint on what they need and what's what. And I felt that there hasn't been any, let's say, specific invitation. It's an open plan, open invitation at this time, information on a general level, so that wherever the group is, if it's really important, if we have an issue in our wellness community that needs to be spoken of, then people are welcome to come present it and say, let's work on that, let's talk on that value. That's where I would like it to go, as opposed to specifically to people yet. I haven't gone there now.
Just a point of information, you might find this interesting. When we did the
branding exercise.
visitor surveys, visitors perceive this as a healing place.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a place that is set aside from the madness over there.
Right.
It's calm, peaceful. It's a place of connection. It's a spiritual place.
Yes,
Cool.
yes, it
There's
is.
there's a whole spiritual dimension.
Well, and
Yes.
maybe if I could add, so, and that's a fantastic question. We haven't actually extended the invite yet, but we definitely have created our list of people we feel have a voice and a message to share. So, and there's probably many to come to that list. So,
It's a little bit like being very careful about how you present it so that people don't get misled or get felt like they're not invited. We want
Maureen,
everybody-
did you have a question?
yeah.
Just some of the practicalities. Is Voice America is a nonprofit organization?
No.
No, okay. There are certain constraints that are on us and as in terms of a municipal committee about providing direct support to a business. And so how do you see us being able to help you?
Well, I think, first of all, it's an attitude of support towards a service, because right now, there's no money, there's no request for anything. We're just asking you to present yourself as the community at large for us right now, who's protecting the needs of the people. And then because of that, we would like to serve the people. We're not here to make anything happen outside of that need. So if the community needs to speak on certain issues and we can do that for them, where we bring people in to speak to those issues, we're serving the people that way. That would be the one thing that I would request. I don't want to ever feel like I'm going against the needs of the people here. That wouldn't make any sense. It's for them.
Thank you.
Is it going, what sort of timeline, I guess, is the first question?
Okay,
When
so
when is the first of the 52 weeks
Thank
when
you.
you're going to be
That would
going
be
live
March
starting?
27th, actually. It's
Okay.
coming up very soon.
And is it just you presenting, or is it going to be interaction with people?
That's a big part of it. The first 3 months are going to be, as I mentioned, a simple presentation of the platform, the consciousness on which we're going to create.
So the people at the other end watching won't be able
Yeah.
to feed in questions?
No, you'll be able to
or-
call in and ask
Okay.
questions and
So
stuff like that. I could
A
have.
podcast talk show?
Yeah.
It's
It's
actually
a
an
lot.
online radio show,
Okay.
to be
Yeah.
more accurate. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So people will be able to call in, we'll present a certain way of management and a certain way of talking about things and create a way that we can communicate. So it's like the forum. And then after, this like a tentative plan right now. I mean, anything can change depending on the needs, right? So we have total creativity. After the first 3 months, my thought was that from there we should have a good reflection of who's interested, because it's based on desire and need. So who's interested? What areas, how do we want to approach it? And therefore have a list of presenters, and, people who are going to come in and present their way of thinking, the way that they approach things, ways of management, it can be anything. So, yeah.
Great, well, I think we have an agenda next time, so we really appreciate you coming and talking about us, to us, and with us. The one thought I have is we have a number of working groups within the Economic Development Committee, and that changes depending on what projects are happening. One of the main and most active working groups at this point is the Business Engagement Working Group. Business, you probably, or hopefully you're aware that we're having a business summit on the 20th, which will have some very great presenters on community economic development and an opportunity to ask some questions of them. And I hope that if you're going to attend that you would think, as you're listening to their presentation, about highlighting your industry sector in a question to them so they can address the wellness aspect of business on Bowen.
That sounds great. That sounds very great.
And then the other part of our business engagement strategy so far has been to host sort of industry sector little gatherings, just short, half an hour, 45-minute breakfast or coffee and muffin type gatherings, and gathering together people who are in the wellness sector is probably something that will be on our curriculum for this
Now,
year.
the podcast is going to be under empowerment, not wellness. So
Okay.
just making sure that you know that. Though we will approach wellness issues, the point is that she chose 10 women throughout North America who she would choose specifically because of the uniqueness of their approach to health and wellness, but also the art really specifically.
Okay.
Highlight there. So under the podcast, it'll be empowerment, but we're touching wellness issues there too. So it could be business, it could be art, it could be anything.
Right. Super.
Cool, great, thank you.
Really great, and you're welcome to stay if you like, but there's no need. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, our action items.
Okay.
Well, first of all, I guess, I don't think we had any direct follow-up. That was just informational. So, unless any-
Maybe the business breakfast, we haven't decided what the next one would be, but I know that our industry, wellness environment was on our list. Agriculture was also on our list.
and the B&Bs and tourism.
Yeah.
Um,
So the next one, those will be,
Okay.
Wellness one would be its own.
pardon?
Maybe I'm thinking about in a working group, we talked about it.
What?
What groups to address next?
I think we had a short list, but we haven't made a decision on the next one.
mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's touch on that a little bit as we go along here too. So for our action items from January 11th on page 8. Yep, sure. You can bring it.
Confirm fund availability, yes.
And you meant
Communicate.
funding availability?
Well, yeah, it was a verbal conversation, it makes me nervous, I wish I had a paper trail, but let's confirm, I've got witnesses. Communicate with the CAO regarding using the Bowen Lodge, that was mostly Daniel Martin who stepped in on that, on the grounds that the rezoning application is not coming to the EDC for comment. So there's no
Okay.
perceived conflict there.
Thank you.
Oh, that's interesting.
It is interesting. Draft work plan and budget request. So these notes, thank you very much, Robin, will need to be put into a work plan and budget. I haven't had a chance to do that. Robin and I are going to work together on that. We've been both slammed like everybody, so. Staff expressed interest in hosting the tech dev workshops being offered by the province. That got a little bit complicated, but what we've done is we have someone will be a presence at the summit, Jerry Wilkins from Coastal Communities BC, also from the Ministry of Citizen Services. And we'll have Colleen McCormick coming to the March 8th meeting. An ad has been published in the newspaper regarding getting the public come to that. And then the Tech Dev 101 workshops is still up in the air.
Hi there, it's Wendy. I can jump in here quickly just on an update on the Tech Dev workshop. So I did communicate your interest, Bowen Island's interest, to the ministry that organizes these Tech Dev workshops. So they have noted your interest, and moving forward, they cannot confirm at this time whether they have the capacity to include Bowen Island in this round of workshops, simply because they're finalizing the list of communities for the March date for the workshop. So that's the latest information I received from them.
Okay.
Thanks, Wendy.
Thanks, Wendy.
Welcome.
Include discussion of success measurement on the annual business summit, business engagement working group.
Who's on the business engagement board?
Yeah, we didn't, did we discuss success measurement?
No,
Not
we didn't.
yet. We've been working on the design, Ed is, we can talk more about that, but,
We have 3 stated objectives, so I don't know, that's, I think, a good start to our success
yeah.
factors.
Well, if
Okay,
you met
but we'll-
those objectives, then
Yes.
it was, yeah.
Yes, and they're in a version 2 of the Business Summit design.
I'm gonna print that.
Who liked and shared any, been by local media?
the bunches.
Yes.
Yeah,
I did.
yeah. All right, good for us.
Who's designing the print outs? They're very good.
That's Sophie
Oh, Sophie's
and
very-
Janet, yeah.
Very
Yeah.
You know, in the ones I'm seeing in the paper.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
really great.
They've improved a lot from the canned ones, I think, that were
Yeah.
printing too small and.
They're very good.
We had one years ago when we called it Buy on Bowen,
Yeah.
Bob, and then
Yeah.
Bob Turner chose to run for mayor, so we had a
Oh.
whole,
Right.
we had to change the, take the signs down.
Then engage with the Facebook page. BIM. Invite CD representative from SFU, that's Wendy, is hooked us up with Jeremy, thank you.
So, just an update on this front, yes. So the idea, I think, was one of the previous UBC meetings where I kind of put forth the, perhaps the opportunity to have someone from SFU that's working with the ministry on a project on CEV work, and that individual is Jeremy Stone. And I believe he is now your keynote speaker at the Business Summit. So I don't know if that's needed at your next EBC meeting or in the springtime. So just wanted to relate that.
We have him presenting with
West Regan.
Wes Regan. I've been in touch with both of them, and Jeremy and I are having a call on Wednesday the 13th to go over the speaking notes that we sent him and to get any additional. So, and then we're also sending the summit design as the context. So this is the context of which the evening, so if you can fit this into the context of what we're doing. So
So when is the meeting?
February, it's a phone call at 2:30 on February the 13th.
Okay, Wednesday.
Yes.
Super. Thanks so much for following up in that way, Ed. It's shaping up well.
And then, like our workshop, we'll discuss that. And then we have to remember to thank Marie at the summit.
Is he
Oh.
back on the?
Yeah,
It was a discussion about recognizing his work.
yeah. I
Right.
wasn't to do anything as far as I knew.
No.
I thought we were, I don't know, yeah.
He's not back on the
Actually,
tourism
it
board.
He
is.
is back on the tourism
Oh.
board.
Oh.
I've got lots to talk about today.
What's his new title?
There is no title, he's just a board member.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, he, like, I've got notes to talk about today.
Yeah,
It's
for
good,
sure. We'll
it's
talk
good.
about
Sure,
it.
his retirement record.
Yeah.
Well, then you just have to recognize Murray's work, not,
Yeah.
Not retired.
Yeah,
I think it's just a question of, yeah, I think
Yeah.
that, but, or we did, was I to ask him?
It's not your name's not decided. I think I just looked at you because.
you just have to make sure he's gonna come.
It's, I'm more,
Yes.
it's just,
Okay, I guess I can talk to him about that, about him coming to the summit. I didn't think I did.
he always comes to this.
We should make
Oh
sure.
yeah, Murray's gonna say we'll watch Netflix.
I was gonna say, we should make sure that they're gonna be home because they travel a lot, but I
No, they're
actually
not,
think they're
because
not
of
going anyway
Emery's.
because they're
Yeah, so if you
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
have an RSVP from Murray by the end of next week, then
My afternoon, once we get this
One-
agenda finalized today, is gonna be spent massaging that.
then one of us can call him and say, are you coming?
Go ahead.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'll give that to you if you want.
So I emailed.
Or are we waiting for something from her? Do we want to move
I
that?
just emailed her and she hasn't
Yeah.
replied. So I'll just pop up the stairs.
Oh, is Emma up next?
Well, Steph's doing that. I think everyone's aware that that council deferred to appoint new members to the EDC until after the business summit.
No, I was wondering actually.
Okay.
Okay.
So that's what's happened in that regard.
Okay.
And do you want to, is there some thinking that you want to share with us on that, or is it,
No.
are we hoping to sort of roster up our names at the business summit, or is it just a timing thing?
It's more of a timing thing, I
Okay.
think.
Yeah, because I noticed that the latest request did not include our committee, like for requests to the community for new members on different committees.
From
Oh,
council
the
or
latest
from-
ad in,
There's a muni ad that
Oh,
says
in the
yeah.
newspaper
municipality is requesting volunteers for,
for the various committees, okay.
but ours is not listed, so I assumed we were good.
I think the idea was just to have some applications and see if there was any interest at the business summit.
Right, so should, I guess my question is should we be, because I'll be doing an introduction to the EDC, and, you know, last summit I did say, you know, of course, inviting people who are interested to apply, but maybe I should make a special mention, or have, you know, maybe Allison or Maureen make a special mention that, you know, that it's still possible for this term to apply to the
Is it still possible for this term to apply?
Yes, you can apply at any time.
You can apply at any time.
Okay,
Yeah.
well,
We sometimes just advertise one.
that seems like, since we haven't, council hasn't officially accepted, it
You
seems
can
like.
extend.
Are you having
if
this
you wish.
Hello, Emma.
Do you want to come to chair?
That's okay. It's great to see everyone.
Thank you for coming, Daniel.
You're welcome.
I'm glad you're here, actually.
Take it away, Daniel.
So I don't. You've got an agenda there. So,
So this was circulated to the committee, I believe earlier in January. I passed my mind back. So this is in December. Council directed staff to prepare a work program for a consultation process on short-term rentals. And as part of that, they directed us to consult with the EDC and the Housing Advisory Committee for any comments before coming back to council with the work program. So this is trying to say, so some background, so Bowen Island permits bed and breakfasts in almost all residential properties. We don't permit short-term rentals, which is like the overnight rental of a dwelling unit. But we know that many exist on Bowen at this time. And so council has directed us to prepare work programs. So this is trying to consult with the community in terms of what do we want to do with this, with our short-term rental. Now that business license bylaw has come in, there's more avenues for municipalities to explore. So some places now allow short-term rentals, but with, you know, business license requirements and pieces like that. So there's sort of more avenues for municipalities to look at and say, okay, what works on Bowen? And so part of the goal of the consultation is to try to come up with things like, what are the goals of a regulation? What are the concerns of the community? What are the opportunities? So what we want to do is prepare sort of that background information so everybody sort of knows, okay, what's the regulation? What's the reality on Bowen right now? What are sort of to emerge? What are just goals or guiding principles of the community? What do we want to get out of regulation? And then to craft the regulation and bring it to council to say this is how we want to go forward. So it may entail changes to the land use bylaw. It may entail changes to the business license bylaw. Ways to regulate and allow pieces like that. In terms of background information, so we did, Maureen has reached out to Airbnb, and we, a few weeks ago, did a session with Host Compliance, which is a company that what they do is they monitor a variety of online booking services. They monitor Airbnb, they monitor TripAdvisor, and they monitor Expedia. They said there's 50 that they monitor. And they did a session with us, and they give us sort of this freebie session, and they say, okay, we've looked at how many listings are on Bowen. I think they said there were 108 listings on Bowen. They said 84% of them are entire house, but it's a little misleading because they would consider entire house to be like if you had a guest cabin, they would say that's an entire house listing, even though it's allowed. We would consider it a bed and breakfast.
So
it's not a
separate
dwelling unit.
building.
A separate building. Yeah. yeah, so it's interesting to have some background. They had it. We can circulate their PowerPoint as well with the EDC because they have a little map that shows where the listings are. And it's kind of where you'd expect. It's like where the houses are. That's where the listings are. It was very surprising. I think they said the average overnight is $150 Canadian. They get it in US dollars. But when I convert, what's the average booking on Airbnb or on any of these online services? But it kind of tells me it's probably not primarily houses, but it's primarily cabins. Like anytime I look on Airbnb, it's like if you have a bedroom, it's sort of less than 100. But if you have people who actually list their entire house, it's in the hundreds of dollars a night. So it's somewhere in there. So we're only looking for any comment from the EDC on terms of how we're going to approach this, and I think as part of that we'll be coming to EDC for like actual principles and stuff like that in terms of what we want out of it. But this is sort of that first step of saying this is how we're going to systematically approach this in terms of getting comments and Allison.
I replied by
Yeah.
email, is that, so we don't need to go over this now, right? You've got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I guess I'm not quite sure that the work plan that's presented is what we were thinking about at council.
Okay.
Because I thought we were going to develop a policy of, okay, what are we going to do? Are we just going to leave things alone? Are we going to decide that we have to put regulations in the land use bylaw? Are we going to leave the land use bylaw as it is and then enforce it? And the way we get to draft 3.1, it's time to prepare a policy that reflects the findings of the previous phases. And then in draft policy, coordinate your and then council adopts a policy. And then the next heading is monitor compliance and enforcement strategy. Well, I'm not sure, a policy is not anything that you can levy fines and whatever on. I mean, if the land use bylaw says there aren't going to be any short-term rentals, which is what it says now, then the enforcement automatically is, because they can't get a business license, we can't have any agreements with Airbnb to share or them collect stuff because Airbnb is going to be wanting them to have business licenses. So I thought what the policy was, we were going to do some consultation and then come up with, okay, what are we going to do? Are we going to go in the direction of putting regulations in the land use bylaw to, or are we just, because we've now implemented business licensing, in the old way, we were just sort of turning a blind eye unless there was a lot of noise complaints. So the initial bit to find out what's out there and what all the issues are is really good, but I just, once we sort of get into 3, I'm just not really sure.
And you're right, Allison. I don't think that fully captures sort of how I had envisioned it, which is the policy is sort of, if we do all and say this is how we want to approach it, and then there would likely be, preclude, but there would likely be then bylaw amendments that would follow that
Yeah,
step.
so sort of when you get from, I guess, 4 down, maybe isn't really what we were.
Yeah, so it's somewhere in after that 3.1, because ideally I think where we're going to say, okay, this is our report, we recommend that, if that's the case, we would make these changes to the land use bylaw, make these changes to the business license bylaw, whatever else it may be.
Yeah.
And then that would follow, but sort of we get buy-in, okay, this is the big approach, this is what we want to do, and then we just follow.
Then we've got to get into the nitty-gritty
Yeah.
of actually putting the wording in the land use bylaw.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, as far as the EDC making a comment then on this plan that you've got now, is part of this plan to, once because you've got an engagement portion of your plan, I mean, that's going to be when the EDC is going to be able to reflect a little bit more widely on this plan, is that when public engagement is happening. At least that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Well, I guess my thought when we were referring it was that we were asking the EDC to give some input on the work plan.
The work plan itself.
They did
Yeah.
by email,
Yeah.
that did
Yes.
go around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is further,
Not whether we think it's to be
Right, okay.
hard
So,
or
so in
good,
part,
bad, or
we're
different.
asking, the process, sort of that process question, but also to bring it up again, so you're sort of, so you got this sort of background and you're thinking about it as well, so you've got advanced warning in it.
Right, and so Ed, you had an opportunity and you responded by email. I didn't have an opportunity to go through it and in detail. How is everyone else sitting on that at this point? Have we had an opportunity to look at it, Maureen? Or?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we also discussed this last Friday at the Housing Committee meeting,
Okay.
and provided feedback. Emma was at that meeting. And the kinds of things that we flagged had to do with the follow-up, assessing whether it had the intended impacts or whether there were any unintended consequences as a result of introducing this, and keeping an eye on that, and being as flexible as possible during the first year of looking at this, because there was likely going to be some worry out there in the community among people who are perhaps currently doing something that's not legal. And we wanted to make sure that it was clear to the community that this was something that was in development, and it wasn't going to be heavy-handed in its implementation. We also brought up the point about the potential for introduction of the municipal and regional district tax, which is a tax that in some areas the Airbnb is collecting on behalf of local municipal governments. And the reason that came up in the Housing Committee is that there was a recent change made that enables the MRDT to be redirected. And in the past, it used to be, if that was collected, and it could be anywhere from 1% to 3% of the rental cost. So it's paid by the person who's using the B&B, not the person who owns the B&B. The change to the legislation was that rather than that money going only to tourism, it could go into affordable housing. So the Housing Committee wanted somewhere in here to be some sort of discussion about whether, as part of the implementation of short-term rental regulations, if we could look at the MRDT, because it might help us significantly on another front. In fact, they got quite excited about that.
Yeah, so it's a piece, I don't think this reflects it, but yeah, to sort of incorporate at the start, so it's sort of part of the conversation that, like, if we go the route of saying we're going to allow more opportunities for short-term rental, that there can be a trade-off in terms of, but we can also actually have a tax that then benefits, can benefit some split of, promoting tourism on both and promoting affordable housing on both.
Is there any question as to whether Bowen, if we decided that that was something we wanted to proceed with, would be allowed to do that? Because isn't it resort municipalities or?
No, that's different.
Is it?
It's-
Okay.
Yeah.
It would
We've
be a
never done it in the
municipal decision.
past because under both the sales tax and the MRDT, if you had 4 or fewer units, you didn't have to collect sales tax and you weren't subject to the MRDT.
Even if Bowen had a policy, you still.
Yeah, so even if we'd applied for it, there was only two providers at that point in time that would have been paying it, and that was Dan and Rondi. So that meant everybody else didn't, which was unfair. So that was sort of the thinking as to why we never pursued it.
But what has happened since is that
There's no
It's
exemption.
changed.
Everybody,
You don't
1
have
unit
that
or more
4-unit
pays
cap.
now.
Right.
Yeah. That'd be interesting, actually. On the data you got with the introduction of sales tax and removal of the 4-unit minimum, has the stock depleted? Have people decided, I'm not going to bother with the sales tax? And that was, I think there's a lot of concern that it was extra money that never got reported.
Yeah.
So has there been a noticeable reduction in available units?
I don't have any
They
tracking
didn't-
like over time.
No, they didn't comment
They
on
did,
that.
no.
Yeah.
They did like point in time. So even when they did the, there's 108, I believe, units, they were flagging kisses in January.
Hmm.
Yeah, so they don't do any sort of, they just say this is what's available now.
So it's a point in time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we'd have to get them to do several points in time to.
So, so if we, like Host Compliance does it and they charge an annual rate based on number of listings in a community, I think it's $30 per listing. And then for the most simple, like address identification, and then they say they update it multiple times a week, and then we would actually be able to track it over time.
Because there might be a whole bunch that weren't available in January just because people have gone away, and what's the point?
Yeah.
Because there's nobody, yeah.
The information that we got from Airbnb is kind of interesting. They have a website called Airbnb Citizen, and there was a lot of sort of high-profile communities where their information was summarized, how much money people made, how many units there were. So I thought if they got it for the larger communities, maybe they got it and could share it for Bowen. So the information we got from them was that they have 80 hosts that are active. Average host age is 51. The number of nights for a typical listing when it's being used is 58. The number of inbound guest arrivals in the last 12 months, so this is through its calendar year, 8,300. That's a lot of inbound guest arrivals. Average length of stay, 2.2 nights. And the top cities by guest arrival are Vancouver, North Vancouver, Surrey, Burnaby, Coquitlam, and Toronto. And the other thing, the average income is $13,900 per host. And one of the interesting things that they flag is that on Bowen Island, 77% of the Airbnb hosts are women. And that is extremely high in comparison to other communities.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
But does that,
There are all sorts of questions you can raise. Is it just that the guys are too lazy to be listed as the host? But if the guys are too lazy to be listed as the host, that's a dynamic that would be across the board. We are still proportionately significantly higher.
yeah.
Because that really begs the question of whether there's, income support happening
Exactly.
for women who are maybe not in a partnership, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's where the
Yeah.
unintended
Or a second
consequences
source
thing
of
comes up
family
for me.
income.
Yeah.
That was one of the things when we did those sessions at UBCM. We can send around the links to the presentations that were done at UBCM for everybody. They're on the UBCM website.
Yeah, they're good.
But they all raised that when they started looking, there was, a lot of it was was a mortgage helper, or the second
yeah.
source of family,
Yeah.
help them make ends meet.
Can I ask a question about the, in 2.4, multi-stakeholder workshop?
Mhm.
So to facilitate consensus building among the key stakeholders. So you're through a general public information session, doing an online survey. Who are you anticipating would be the key stakeholders?
I mean, to some extent, tourism Bowen, and I think I envision that as like the people who are running bed and breakfasts or short-term rentals.
Okay, so
I think it would probably evolve a bit as
Yeah.
we move
Yeah.
through the
well, that's what I
process.
kind of anticipating
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
That once you get a little bit of, you do some of
Yeah.
it, you get some information. It's probably going to affect how this all
Yeah.
rolls out a bit, right?
And I'm assuming that's multiple workshops, or.
But she's only got workshop,
Yeah.
multi-stakeholder
Yeah,
meeting,
yes.
Yeah.
but who's the
Yeah.
stakeholder?
Yes,
Just
that's
the
my
neighbors
question.
are the
Yeah.
stakeholders as
Yeah.
well as the people that are
Yeah, what are
operating.
the criteria for being invited to one of these,
Yeah.
Especially because it does say this is expected to build consensus. So,
Yeah.
that seems like an important session to me
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah.
Who's going to be there, how it's going to be managed,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Will we have an opportunity to comment on this work program at another stage, or is it just now?
Probably just now in terms of then you'd be commenting on, then it would be coming to you for comment
Mhm.
on short-term rentals. And I mean, maybe then you're saying, okay, we need to do more, we haven't heard enough, we need more information, and that's sort of your process question as we go. And I think same like the workshops, like probably if we've done, public open house and an online survey, that's to some extent building our participants for the workshop, right? So there's people who would say, okay, probably, you would want to be, we've identified them as a stakeholder because they operate rooms or they, would be affected. And there's people who fill in a survey or come to the open house and say, I'm interested, I'm affected, and a stakeholder in this, right? And so they sort of come out, but always it's hard to know in advance.
Well, there is a thingy here for public participation plan for details, so I have to put that. So, who's gonna beta test the survey? Like I've always found, when you draft it, it's good to get a few people to fill it out, just to make, you know, because sometimes the questions just don't make sense when you're actually reading them if you,
I think Emma will.
So,
I'll give you.
Yeah, if the EDC wants to be involved in that, actually, like we'd probably work with Sophie and that more eyes is generally good. We've got to start, Squamish recently did a survey and they sent us their survey. And so we're using that as like an initial.
and
at least part.
Tofino did one.
Yeah, and they've got comments too, like I know when I contacted them, they said, here's our survey and then please talk to us more because having done it, we, you know, so kind of use that as the initial run.
so I'd like to suggest that we are you looking for all of our comments during this meeting today, or would we have another opportunity?
So we're looking to bring it to council on the 25th.
Okay.
So then the deadline for reports is next Friday, in terms of then Emma to finalize this draft report to send to council. So, you know, sooner is better in terms of who you want us to incorporate it to what we bring to council. But having said that, you know, it's sort of something that will evolve too. So when we come to the EDC again to say, what are your comments on the actual thing? If you say, oh, but you need to do more work on something.
Okay, we're a bit limited on time, just because I want to try to keep us on time. I'll let you just point
I
out
think
in a second.
4.1 and 4.2 should be after 4.3, because
Allison, just hang on for a second. So, because we're already sort of past our allotted time for this, what I'd like to suggest is that probably the most direct contact that the EDC is already in process with is the Business Engagement Working Group. And I'm thinking about the fact that we've talked about in the Engagement Working Group having B&Bs and accommodation providers as one of our sessions, which we haven't had yet. Like a breakfast session. And but that wouldn't happen before the 25th of February.
But I think like if the EDC was doing it, we would definitely like partner or springboard with that to say that would be a session we could use, like we could bring as part of the actual, so not like talking about the work plan, but talking about short-term rentals and our regulations and what works and what doesn't work.
So maybe what we could do is any specific comments that people have about the work plan, in addition to, we could email before what what date would we have to get?
So the 15th is our council report deadline.
The 15th?
So it's next Friday.
And then,
Say the 14th then?
Yeah. But Thursday would be great.
Thursday the 14th deadline, speak now.
okay, so under keys and stakeholders, she hasn't got EDC.
and then maybe as an action item, we can resolve that we'll have the Business Engagement Working Group schedule in conjunction with staff a tourism accommodation breakfast.
And we
You
know.
might not want to do breakfast,
Or, okay.
B&Bs,
Yeah, right.
maybe 11 o'clock in the morning or something.
Yeah, good
Although it's
point.
off season on a Wednesday morning, like, I don't know.
Well, you never know.
Yeah.
But it's, sorry. I'm
Yeah.
just-
No, good point, okay.
Yeah. Do you think there'd be any reticence for people knowing that this is happening to come forward?
I mean, I think this is probably if we weren't doing something, it might be more reticent,
Okay.
right? Like if we're just saying it's still not allowed,
Right.
like don't come forward and talk to us about it because we're saying it's not
And they're all
allowed. As opposed to
advertising.
like we're now considering changes to it. You know, this is your chance to come forward and say I think it should
Okay.
be allowed because there's sort of an avenue there. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
And names will not be taken at the door.
Well,
There might be
that's just
something,
it.
some
Maybe-
bylaw
officer
officer
approaching
approaching your.
No bylaw officers will be present or something.
Well, just simply that you can bring any information or feedback to the EDC, which we can then
Yes,
pass on.
Yeah.
that's something, yes, that would be, you could do that anonymously,
Mhm.
yes.
Yeah. So we're under government.
Okay, so I don't think that our business engagement working group is specifically going to have time either because they're busy with the summit. before the 15th to meet or to schedule that. So I guess would that make sense to have that sometime in March?
Yeah, or April maybe?
Or
Spring break is
April?
the last 2 weeks of March.
Right, so maybe April.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right before Easter.
Early April, I will say.
Yeah,
between spring break and Easter.
Yeah,
yeah.
And maybe subject to Emma saying
Yeah.
it fits in
Yeah.
terms of what she's got
Yeah.
Yeah.
in mind as a rollout. Because it might be a little early, she might still be
Well,
doing
yeah, I was gonna ask, what's
research.
month one?
March, is my
Yeah.
understanding.
Because it's from launch essentially,
So
so
there's no
council says we
reason,
go
because
ahead.
we
Yeah.
have been doing some research,
Yeah,
so I
and so
sort
that's
of
what we're
thought,
hoping is that maybe we can collapse that. And,
Yeah.
you know, we want
it just
sort of
seemed like a
council
really
direction to
long
say,
time.
we're gonna go, and that is definitely how we can start, but yes, we have sort of been starting that background gathering, initially assuming we get to go ahead from council, but, yeah.
Okay, good. Is it, anyone else have anything they need to say right now on that? Great.
thank you.
Thanks,
for coming
Daniel.
down
Thanks,
and,
Daniel.
Okay. That's obviously a big point that's going to continue with short-term rentals.
So huge.
Yeah.
So are we aiming for people catching the 11:30 ferry? Is that-
Are we? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I think it's later than that.
I'm not taking the ferry, I've got something else to do.
Oh, oh.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
I agree.
we can be,
It's
11:30 is our
11:50 or
scheduled
something.
time.
No, our, no, 11:10.
Are we going to
Actually,
Yes.
11:10 is
Yeah.
our scheduled time of adjournment, and it really affects my work day.
Okay, that's
Of
fine.
how we, sorry, because I'm
We'll do
actually,
that, yeah.
yeah, so.
Okay, so as far
Oh, is
as,
it supposed to be 11:30? Is it, like,
It's
should I
just
always
2 hours
plan-
allotted, but I just get
Okay.
some, like, things like Emma, if I give her too much time,
mhm.
Yeah,
she gets anxious, so I
Okay.
just,
Yeah.
I should just.
All right,
Okay,
then
I'll
I'll
go.
keep going.
Fine, right next.
Okay, so subcommittee reports, and I guess first then we have the summit agenda.
So here's the printout of, sorry, it's not included, of Ed's fine work, and then a couple of his questions I answered by email
Yes.
to the small group.
Assumptions are just that, they've changed over time.
You're welcome.
I have a copy of the next.
Does Wendy have a copy?
Wendy, were you on this email with the summit design?
Allison and Maureen, do you want to be CC'd on these kinds of things? Because this is pretty, the purpose of this is a minute by minute, you know how we work.
Yeah.
Minute by minute design of what we're going to do, how we're going to do it. And the purpose is very simple, that we have a unified 4 hours as opposed to someone saying this, someone saying that. So that's what we've tried to do here. And it's subject to change up into the very last minute, as we all know.
And at this point, I don't think I need to be copied on
Okay,
this. I think you guys have got it well.
Okay, good.
Staff's involved in all of this, right?
Yeah.
So,
Okay, good.
okay.
Very good.
Cool, so, I'm sending this to you now, Wendy.
Sure.
And what I would like, so I answered some of these questions. I think this afternoon will be spent, as I mentioned earlier, getting that final invitation out and working the RSVPs. Have you had many? 32. That was from Save the Date. Like I've said before, I don't have to flog this event, but I did think I'd have more than 32. So I just now will start talking to people individually,
How
but I
many
need to clean
came
it.
last time?
Pardon?
How many came last time?
Around 75? Yeah.
That's version 1, I've got version 2 here.
Oh,
So that's okay.
it's okay.
We'll just trash these and Steph will send it out later.
Okay.
You can tell by the ending.
They look so similar.
I know they do.
Sorry.
So is your timeline still roughly the
The
same?
timeline's still the same.
Here, I'll print it.
Yeah.
It's just we're ending differently. We're going to spend the last 45 minutes, quick review of business license, quick review of buy local, and an introduction of protect from the coastal communities people.
I was talking to somebody, a shop owner the other day, trying to encourage them to come.
Yes.
And they will either have to have staff,
Yeah,
because they don't close till 6.
yeah.
So is the keynote speaker after or before?
Keynote speaker is at 4:55.
Okay.
And they've got an hour of question and answers. And they already have our view of the speaking notes. And I've gotten some feedback. Not sure how, they're not sure how they're going to make it that relevant to Bowen, but I think if we get on the phone and talk, we can help them.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
yeah, so most people, if they close a little, might be okay to close a little bit
Yeah.
early, some of them, at this time of year,
Yeah.
hopefully, yeah.
Because the idea is dinner at 6, and then use the dinner as an informal discussion of what people heard
Yeah.
in the keynotes, and then Chris Corrigan is going to take it into table group exercise.
So I think 3 members of council are at a conference this day and the following day.
Okay.
So we might arrive a little bit late.
Okay.
Okay.
That's it. That's
I'm gonna make an administrative defense. Your file is called version 2.
I know.
That's what's still not that deeply flawed. Okay, so how do I find the actual version 2?
I may have to send
Well,
resend.
this
Okay,
says
we
version 1.
Let's send it out.
Yeah, we know.
What more,
They're
so
aware.
you yourself are going to
No,
be
you're
able to
right.
attend, but later, you think?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we'll figure out, it's the first day of the conference, we'll figure out how early we can.
Yeah. Which raises a question on the invitee list. Looks like we're looking at, what, 15, 17 people from staff, EDC, council. How many, if you counted it out?
I haven't done that
Okay.
analysis yet.
We've only got room for, what's our total, 80?
We can go over 75, 80. We
Okay.
can go, I mean, I've got to get the numbers by Wednesday.
We used to have 110 or so in there with the round tables,
Did we?
There's a bit of room.
years
Okay.
ago.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Were you just
Big room.
concerned that there were too many
Yeah,
spots to be taken
yes,
up?
Yeah, I
exactly.
saw that,
Ratio
yeah.
of us to them.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, no, we need a good ratio.
We need way more of them than us.
And it's a conference, you said 3 members of council?
I believe Sue Ellen, yes, and I know David is,
Okay. And you?
and
Okay.
Do we want to add in Rod's comments about acknowledging Murray,
Yeah, thank you.
just so it's not forgotten off the agenda?
But
Acknowledging Murray?
we can plug it, where would we plug that in?
Well, who's going to do it? Rod?
At the intro? Yeah.
Yeah, there are a couple of things, and we can go over the
Yeah.
introduction. And maybe we can discuss it with Maria, as Maria does her report too, because we want to leave her time as well here today. And then one other thought, Ed, though, is with regards to business licensing, if we're going to provide a little bit of an update, perhaps we should consider inviting Tess.
Can I
That's
have
part of that as well.
design back a little bit? Yes, we've actually been busy. I'm sorry about this.
Yeah.
I was traveling for the last 3 weeks. When we're doing business licensing, we're looking, I think actually invite Tess would be very good,
Yeah.
because one of the things we would like to think about is, just quick overview, number of businesses that have applied to date, benefits of having a business license, timeline for applying, and, encourage businesses to apply. I mean, very simple, like 5-10 minutes, but if Tess was there, that would be very good.
Yeah.
So could Daniel do that?
Yeah.
Or,
Daniel could.
I mean,
Do
so it's up to
that.
you. Do you want to, you're just talking about the ratios. So that's,
Yeah.
Daniel will be there anyways.
Yes.
But we can also invite Tess if that's what you like.
Well, I think it all depends on when we find out who the invitees are
Who-
from council and the BDC.
Yeah.
Did I
Okay.
RSVP?
You'll be on my case if I haven't. so
Yes, I
never mind.
will.
Okay,
This
can
afternoon.
we then move on to our connected
So we
communities
can
update?
This is going to get recycled, right?
So this version 2 is the final agenda. I need to get it.
I'll send it to you probably by 1 o'clock.
And I'll be going live with that this afternoon. Publish it.
You're not sending this out?
No, I'll make a trimmer
Yes,
version, a
yes,
cleaner version, I
yes.
can have you vet it.
Got it, got it.
Wendy, are you coming to the business summit?
I am planning to, so, I have a bit of a knee injury at the moment. I am hoping that I will be off my crutches, by February 20th, so that's my plan.
Okay, I
Crutches
think
are
so.
welcome. One of our counselors went through the whole election campaign on his crutches.
Oh dear.
Get you the sympathy vote.
We've given you 15 minutes towards the end to introduce yourself and what this might be about. You can do it in 5 minutes if you wish.
Okay.
Okay?
So I guess you're coming, well,
Yeah.
Yes. If you are
we'll get you a
coming.
handicap parking spot.
Okay, connected communities? What does that look like? What they got?
So we, Rod and Robin and I spoke, and Wendy has introduced us to 2 members. You can tell me if this is true, Wendy, of Ministry of Citizen Services, and they are in a project called UBC Connecting Coastal
Yeah, it's coastal, isn't it? Yeah,
Coastal
community.
Communities. Sorry. And they, Jerry Wilkins and Colleen McCormick. Jerry Wilkins will be attending the summit as a participant and source of information. She'll do a brief talk, but in respect of the design of the agenda, we're not going to be featuring the tech part. But hopefully she'll be there to help inform discussion and how tech development comes into the economic development. Colleen McCormick will be here on March 8th. That has been published in the newspaper. Special invite, tell your friends please to come to that meeting.
And I just say that they're very enthusiastic and have a lot of information at their fingertips of other communities.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Excellent resource. Thank you, Wendy, for setting us up with them.
No worries. Yeah, I think basically what their role is in government is really to help communities. I think they started out with more of the rural lens, so communities out in Nelson, Tofino, and other parts have been featured and are examples of how technology is being utilized to help specific areas of interest to each particular community. So they are very interested to collaborate with Bowen Island, and they have some tools. They have a roadmap, kind of a design plan that they could share with you. And I think based on the conversation that took place last week, the purpose of Jeremy attending on February at the February summit is really just to have a sense to observe the community and prior to them presenting at the March 8th EDC meeting, which Colleen will attend. And I hope to be there.
Great.
Terrific. Okay, well that's in progress, and we're going to get to meet those people at the summit. So that's
One
Jerry. We're going to be Jerry, but we'll have a better idea and able to connect about our next meeting. Okay. The budget request and work plan.
So thank you, Robin Fenton, for,
Yes.
so I took the notes down from our workshop, sent them to her, she's cleaned them up. I liked what we submitted last year, it was very simple to the point, so I can do that. Maybe I can get it to you early next week as far as just a list of what Rod and I discussed. I also confirm that with Robin is, and maybe the counselors can comment on this. We thought a low, firm ask would be the way to go for budget.
Yes.
Low, but well backed up and strong. So I can try to work on that, maybe early next week.
Yeah.
Maybe, should I send it by you or
I think send.
Rod?
Rod.
But I'd like you guys to see it before it goes to council, see if your council senses. Maybe, okay, so we'll
Yeah.
work on it and then,
I guess the other thing, which like we've identified there was a fantastic session that we had on our strategy planning, and we identified, I mean, not more, I think, than we'd talked about before, but we keep getting more and more clear about what community economic development looks like for Bowen Island and sort of what this committee is really here to do. That having been said, we we'll revisit just reading our terms of reference, we're directed by council in what we do. We're not here to necessarily decide, I feel, what we should be doing. We're here to follow up on what council wants us to do. And it does appear, we've had the technology and our local economy as part of our discussions for quite a long time. I don't know that we have any specific direction from council in that area right now. I mean, I think business engagement is implicit in the committee and what we're doing. But the referral, for instance, on the scale of the business licensing is, we don't have a direction like that at this point from council. So in terms of finding our budget and making our request, in some ways, to make a firm minimum request, I mean, we have the business summit is a big part of already what we've committed to this year. In addition to that, in general, we have business engagement, the meetings that we have to follow up on, and we have some speakers and other topics that we'd like to continue to have, because I think we're very successful in moving us forward on the community economic development model last year by bringing in people to talk to us, and it turned out to be very inexpensive because most of the staff did a great job of very cordially inviting them, I guess. But anyway, we'll definitely be making allowances for that. So top line, that's sort of the area that I see. Again, with the caveat pending, council's direction to us in terms of what it is that they want us to follow up on.
We're closing in on completing our strategic plan, and that's probably going to come to council around the second meeting in February, the 25th. And there may be something that flows from that. But the only thing that is sort of top of mind for me is the potential rural dividend fund project. And Wendy, I was wondering if you had any additional information on timelines for the RDF results.
So I had a quick chat to find out what's happening. So I think you guys know that the project development applications, the 10,000 ones, so those were announced, I believe, a couple of weeks ago, and in that press release, I think they had noted a mid-February timeline. The latest that I've heard from a conversation this week I had internally is that it might be pushed back again to potentially now end February. The main reason being that it's still, I guess, it's all about communications right now, government communications, and they're in the queue, I'm assuming, in terms of waiting for other government announcements to be made, and so this item has now been noted for end February.
Okay, thank you, that's helpful.
Yeah.
Quick question on the plan. There's a couple small changes. What would I see about the changes? Things that I think were...
I don't think this is a plan.
Or
This
this
is
thing,
notes,
just-
yeah.
Okay, some things on the notes.
Yeah, give them to me, sure.
Perfect,
Yeah.
okay.
So, and then Wendy had suggested that we submit 2 work plans. One is a work plan with the rural dividend fund,
Yeah.
and then one is without. Does
So,
that make sense?
from a funding source.
for a budget request.
Yeah, because if we want to do it, but we're not going to be eligible for the rural dividend fund. I was a little concerned, Wendy, it's Allison. You used the words more of a rural community when you were talking about the connectivity. And we're rural.
It's a soft spot there, Wendy.
I'm with you on that, yes.
Yeah, so if you want to do it, then you're going to have two asks or prioritize, we want to do these things, which we're hoping the rural dividend, but if it doesn't, then we'll knock this off and do that if we don't get the rural dividend funding.
So, because if we have the rural dividend, that's going to be creating an economic development plan, right?
Yes.
So then if we don't get it,
Do we
want to
do the
do
plan?
we need to do some planning.
I think regardless, sorry, jumping in, I think regardless, I think there are two separate issues. Yes, the RDP program, right now, Bowen Island has been given an exemption to apply to this program, right? And it's not a permanent exemption, and there is this whole review process of the rural dividend program that's currently, I think, recently completed. They're looking at the final report right now internally, so that's my understanding of that part. I think the second issue is it would be important to continue to concurrently move forward to seek a rural status, I guess, for Bowen Island. So, it's important that Bowen Island is recognized as a rural community, so that in the event that there are other funding programs that support rural communities, that Bowen Island could be eligible to apply for them. So I think that second piece is to continue to kind of push forward to the ministry, be it with Job Street and Technology, with LINRO, with Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, to say politically that there is a need for Bowen Island to be recognized as a rural status. And I think there are some, perhaps, work or some maybe ongoing thinking around that from Bowen Island. I remember having a bit of a conversation last summer with some folks in your community. So I would strongly encourage that stream to continue concurrently with the rural dividend application. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, Wendy.
Yeah.
A lot of that work, though, would occur at the council level. And
Correct.
it has been identified as a priority going forward. So I think we can be confident that we're going to
Keep pushing.
be dogged and continue to push on that. I'm not sure what role there would be specifically for the EDC other than something that might be directed from council. The idea of preparing two budgets, I'm not sure about that, because I think if we don't get the rural dividend funds, that there is simply some things that we will not do because we won't have the resources. But I'm open to argument on that one. I'm not sure how that would work.
I guess because last year in our budget request, we did have a couple of thousand to put for planning. But did we? I don't remember.
Yeah, we did. We have
So
4K.
Yeah, so if we don't get the rural dividend, which is a lot for creating a plan, maybe.
That might be-
But
That's my thought.
sorry, the rural dividend fund would pay for an actual
Yeah.
CED, like person,
Yeah.
specific.
Yeah, we're looking to actually develop the community economic
Right.
development plan.
So could we then, so that's, I think, where this idea of, maybe having two versions, because obviously you could budget for having that person, right, which is going to be a lot more than perhaps some like a consultant or, some kind of
There's
consultant.
no way that if we put forward a budget asking for a CED position,
Yeah.
it won't fly.
Yeah, no, that would be a full-time.
I mean, in the grant application's for $100,000, and the majority of that is salary. There is no way that, as a committee, we would get that kind of money to have a person.
Have we got a grant application in?
For the rural dividend.
Yeah, for the rural dividend.
Yes.
But have they made all the announcements?
No, that's what Wendy was saying.
Okay,
It's
there's
towards
more
the end of
coming.
February.
Okay, I thought she was talking about releasing the study.
No.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm
so-
confused, I think.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I don't understand.
I get the fact that the money, if the money is received, it's to hire a person, that's
Yeah,
it.
to make a plan.
Okay,
the plan.
so what I'm saying is, are we going to though attempt to make a plan
If we don't get that.
if we don't get that? And so should we ask for some money for maybe a bit of consulting?
I think you're on the right track. The two asks regarding the budget, the larger ask in the event that we are not eligible for this funding, for this rural development program, we would add a third section essentially, which would, again, as Steph said, say, moving towards developing a community economic development plan. And that'd be essentially figuring out how to do it without
Right.
having that position funded.
So we had 4K the last time.
Yeah.
Why not ask for 4K this time?
Yeah.
Okay. You guys agree with that?
Yeah, and we can do one budget ask, and that can be an item that's
From a
contingent.
budgeting perspective, Raj has to show the income to offset the expenditure.
Mhm.
So the expenditure of the 100,000 would have to be in the budget with a notation subject to grant funding, and the 100,000
Right.
matching grant funding will
Right.
show in the revenue line, because it has
Yeah.
to balance.
Yeah,
And so it's got to go in as a request, but if
Okay.
we don't get it, I
right,
mean, there might be other opportunities in the fall to reapply for it.
right.
Yeah.
And there's
And
this
right,
one.
and that's
So-
what Wendy's saying, is as
so
we
it needs to
maintain
go
our
in there.
efforts on the rural
Yeah.
status. Yeah. Okay, good, then can we leave that and move to our updates?
From council, I just suggest you take a look at the highlights from the last council meeting. They're on the municipal website. And just as I said, we're moving towards having our strategic plan completed, and that will be shared with the public end of the month.
Great, thank you. And Wendy, do you have anything in addition to what we talked about from the province?
No, I think I'm good for today. Thank you.
Okay, super. Well, thanks so much for setting up our call and the tech dev and everything else that's gone on.
Thank you so much, Wendy, and your patience.
No, you're very welcome, guys.
Thanks.
Maureen, you've got the stage.
Okay, well, so we've had 2 meetings in the new year, and as mentioned, as suggested by this committee, and I noticed that it did make it into the strategic planning session notes here, is Tourism Bowen Island needs to develop a strategic plan. So I was gonna say my co-chair, but she's not, she is technically the vice chair, but she's really kind of is my co-chair as well. Her name is Joan Boyer, and she has taken that and kind of run with it. And she approached this organization called the Project Management Association, which its memberships give some of their time to organizations such as ours that have very little money, and volunteer their time to take on a project management role with the organization. So she, collectively, we put together a request. Paul Valley initiated that, and then amongst the group, we put together a request, and Joan is taking that and running with it. So she's approached the Project Management Association already. There's a gentleman on Bowen who actually is one of the facilitators of this thing, Peter Mulholland. Okay, yeah, so he and Joan have been in touch. So we have a deadline for application of February 15th, which is quite quick. And then what we would ideally like to do is have the person start March 1st with the expected completion date of December 31st, which means, so we would hold a session towards the end of March, like sort of a 4 or 6 hour session towards the end of March with the Tourism Bowen Island Committee. And then they would form a plan for us, or go back and write the notes and then bring them to us, and then they would monitor us up until the end of December to make sure that we are actually following through with that strategic plan. Wow, I know. Yeah, it's happening.
So let me make sure I understand that this is a non-profit organization that provides
Yep.
community support to
Yeah.
deserving organizations that
Yeah.
need a lift up.
Yeah. So Joan is the executive director of Destination Imagination, and her group has done this with them, and quite successfully. They were really pleased with it. So yeah, it's a really, really great idea. Yeah. So to make these things quick, I mean, obviously, the biggest part of our strategic plan, I think, is probably going to be funding, monies, budget, that sort of thing, working with the municipality and volunteers. So one of the reasons that Murray did come back onto the board is because Murray has the time-ish. We are all like, we did lose a board member, somebody who did come onto the board in the fall, and he unfortunately had to resign because of his business. He is self-employed, and his business really started picking up, and you know, he's a self-employed solo employee, so he just felt like he wasn't going to have the time to commit. And of course, I work full-time and have many other things on the go, and everybody works full-time. You know, we have a couple other people who are self-employed, so we are seeing a really, really big drop in people having the time to help our only employee, Jody, who is putting in hours that she does get paid for, but heaps of hours that she doesn't get paid for. So that now flows into the whole, okay, so we need to start considering the fact that we should be falling under the municipality a bit more, which we have already discussed here at this committee. So I understand that next Wednesday is a budget open house?
No, it's
No.
Tuesday,
It's Tuesday, okay, so we did get that wrong. What time?
10 to 12.
Oh, it's in the day.
And there's an evening one.
There is,
Maybe the Wednesday.
it may be the Wednesday one that's the
I only
evening
put the
one.
daytime one.
Yeah, okay.
Because it was the first one, yeah. It should, it'll be on, I'll check the calendar.
Yeah, I could do that as well right now. I have it in my,
So when you say falling more under the municipality, do you mean,
well,
what do you mean?
yeah, well, this is developing our, what is the word I'm looking for right now, long-term
Funding strategy, and
Yeah,
getting
like-
core grant program.
because we had short-term, we had short-term,
Wednesdays, the evening, Tuesdays during the day, 8:30 to.
what time is the Wednesday one at? Can you
6:30 to 8:30.
6:30 to 8:30, that's what I thought. Yeah, there's just been a long-term service agreement. Whew, finally came to me, I can never remember it. Yeah, that's what we need to work on, yeah, yes,
So that you feel as though you've got the stability to make certain kinds of decisions?
Yeah, for sure. And help when we need it. And I'm not talking about, you know, physical help of somebody like helping to write a grant or something like that. Just help when necessary.
Having the strategic plan completed will make all of that kind of thing much, much easier.
Okay. So there was some questions at our last meeting. Sorry, I'm trying to be brief, but I do want a couple of questions answered. So there was questions at our last meeting about whether consideration has been taken for Tourism Bowen Island and a long-term funding in this next budget. But we won't know that until we attend that budget open house.
So the budget is usually drawn up on the basis of the current year,
Okay.
and then it gets carried out indexed, so it would have to, the existing amounts then get sort of indexed and carried out.
Right.
So
So unless any discussion had taken place in the
to
fall.
say
or
this
something.
year's it and that's it,
Yeah.
that hasn't happened, so.
Okay. So at this point, is there any need to, like, can we approach anyone right now before Wednesday, or, you know, to discuss how, like, what are,
I'm assuming there's something in the budget. But
Yeah,
we
we
have
are.
not seen the
Yeah.
budget or the details, so I
Okay.
don't know.
the committee decided at our meeting on Tuesday, we just had a meeting, that we should maybe write a letter to the, you know, to the CAO or something like that. Yeah, about the necessity to include or increase. Because I know that we approached,
You did write a letter, I think.
well, we did in the fall. So
Yeah.
maybe was that considered then?
I'm assuming he would have considered that, but I
I
don't.
know, we don't know, this is the
We
thing,
don't
we
have
haven't
the
had any,
detail.
maybe I should
Yeah.
call him or email him. Is that an okay thing to do? These are, these are things that this is all very new to me, so your advice and your help is very greatly welcome, so yeah.
No, just
Okay.
get in touch with Roger
Okay,
and just
okay.
ask. And as Allison said, we haven't seen
Any,
any of the details, so this is
Yeah.
the beginning of a budget process. It's not
Yeah.
that
Oh, perfect,
next,
okay,
yeah.
that's what I did.
next
We-
Wednesday,
we've seen-
that's
I know.
when we're done.
We've seen a list
Okay.
of sort of some of the things that might get left out, but it wasn't in that list.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, cool.
So
Excellent.
it'll be May, won't it, before they?
It has to be approved by May 15th.
May
So
15th, okay.
I think on the timeline, we were looking at end of March, early April for, this is the public
For further-
consultation
This
that's
is,
happening
okay,
this week, and then it'll go, so I think we'd be dealing with bylaws by the end of March.
okay.
Do we need to consider, given sort of where you're at, I mean, is there an appetite for this committee to have a tourism working group to work with Tourism Vaughan?
I would think that would be duplicating.
I think that would be
Okay.
duplicating it,
With
yeah.
having Maureen on the committee.
Yeah, I
Right.
think,
Okay.
yeah, I'm happy to continue in this.
Right,
role.
yeah, good. Okay, well, that's great. I just
Yeah.
want to make sure that you felt like you had enough.
Support.
No, I have great support here.
Yeah.
This is, and like, this is really the first meeting since I've been on the committee that I've been able to really bring a lot of stuff to the table and have feedback and, you know, yeah, and I really, really appreciate that. So, and this is, you know, what I brought up in the meeting on Tuesday is that I'll be, you know, here on Friday and I'll talk about this and bring this up. But I mean, that being said, generally there is way too much work for one person. And there's way too much work for two people, and there's a lot of frustration and, yeah, surrounding the amount of work that there is to be done.
Well,
So,
that comes back to the MRDT
Yeah,
as well. that
totally.
tax.
Yeah.
we talked about that on,
Yeah.
yeah,
So it can be used to support tourism,
Yeah.
affordable housing,
Yeah.
or both.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and we talked about that a bit on Tuesday and understood that, and, or like, you know, like, yeah, let's.
I came across something when I was searching for something else that had a whole raft of information that Destination BC, it's new, that had prepared on explaining what the MRDT was and the whole thing. So I sent that off to Tourism Vaughan, but I can send the same stuff around to you guys if you want it.
Yeah.
Can you, when I reach out this afternoon, include these people on the invite list?
Yes,
for this
of
summer?
course.
Because Part of the whole incorporation to the
Yeah.
community.
The whole of the board.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I will, absolutely, yeah. Thank you.
Great.
And then you can, I can phone them if you need to follow up with them.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Include that in
Would
the
you mind if we just change the order a little bit, because I
Yeah.
tried to test down the first staff.
Yeah.
Getting them to buy a.
Yeah, let's do
Sorry,
it.
thank you.
So just a very quick update on the business licensing. We have received 125 applications so far.
Terrific.
And the program that we're using to keep track and produce the licenses is this close, so we should be issuing next week. So we'll start issuing licenses next week.
Is it an over-the-counter program? Is that what it is?
It's part of Maze.
Part of it.
It's part of Maze, but the module wasn't set up. So it's been a process to set it up, and then I use it a bit, and then we come up with more things that need to be addressed, and they change them, and so it's just been a process all along.
Maze is the accounting
Yes.
software.
Thank you.
Community uses.
Sorry, that does all of our,
I'm glad it
And it's
worked.
got all sorts of modules, and if you keep adding the modules, then there's learning curves. But
so,
then
so
everything's
yeah, this one
integrated.
is the brand new module. It's-
Have there been any unexpected issues with people in this process?
No, I wouldn't say we have unexpected issues. We knew that there would be some issues occasionally, and there have been a couple with either zoning or, there's been a few issues, but they'll all be worked out. They're not, I don't think anything is prohibited.
And so are you going to use the issuing of the first business licenses as sort of like a public announcement?
Yes, I
Yes,
have actually requested that Gary Ander and present Gary Anderson with license number 1.
Terrific.
So I've already asked him for a photo shoot.
We
and,
promised him we'd have license number
Oh,
one
that's
when we
awesome.
started.
Yeah, this is
great.
I think it's wonderful.
I think it's
First business.
See, we
license
are
is
rural.
Dynamite.
A little short story.
Blasted
In my
business
first month
licenses.
as a bylaw officer,
one of my calls, I was talking to Gary, and first thing he said to me was, so are you on board with the business licensing? Are you going to help with the business licensing? So, you know, it was
Yeah.
That's great.
Business licenses are a blast. Right? I can't stop myself. No, that's perfect. Like on
Yeah.
one with that? Yeah, totally.
Are we being recorded?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. We are.
There was a red light on up there, that's fine.
Great, well, that's, and 125 seems like a good number to launch with, and probably should be included in the information with the picture and the whole thing. That's great.
Yeah, it's great, and yeah.
I wonder how many are vacation rentals?
How many are vacation rentals that are
In the application?
not non-permitted? None of the applications we've received are for short-term rentals that are not able to be permitted at this time.
Interesting.
You know, if people have stoves, then they can remove them or not, as they, you know, they can have a B&B. B&Bs are still perfectly legal, so.
Great, okay, thank you, Jess.
And no other questions? Perfect.
The Arts Council, we had a meeting just the other day. We have a new chairman, Rob Glore, and Peter Williamson is the vice chair. We had a long discussion about some new information about the community center and funding. And I'm not going to go into details here because I'm not sure how much this is public, but we are having a meeting as a board on February 21st to strategize how we can support the community center, one clear narrative, you know, persuasive story, et cetera, et cetera. And as most of you know, the Arts Council is a partner with the Muni and trying to move this through. Jacqueline Massey for the Arts Council and Charlotte Jennings for the Muni. So we are girding ourselves for a communication blitz, I think it's going to be. One story, one narrative, compelling, and...
Was the fundraising goal reached?
No, not yet. There is an agenda item, and it's on the open agenda for Monday night.
Okay.
For the first reading. We've filed the grant application, it's gone in, and it's showing a portion that we've got to come up with as a municipality, either through borrowing or fundraising.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're going ahead with a borrowing bylaw that will allow us to borrow up to whatever that shortfall is at the moment. And that shortfall keeps getting smaller because people are still donating. So, but this we need to do to show the province that we can come up with our side. And I think it's roughly 4 that is in that borrowing bylaw. And 2 of that is what we call revenue neutral. In other words, we're paying rent for here and we're paying rent for the dance space and ever. So that covers off $2 million worth of borrowing. So we were always going to have a borrowing referendum to do that piece, but it wouldn't have any impact on people's taxes.
Right.
The other 2 could have an impact on people's taxes, and that's, so it's in the council agenda for Monday, a package, so maybe what we should do is send it around to everybody.
Yes, I wasn't sure what I was
Yeah.
at liberty to say.
Well,
And there's
as
also,
of yesterday, you wouldn't have been able to.
yeah, and we've had a couple of which Jackie probably has, because she would have been involved in,
Mhm.
cheat sheet notes for members of
Mhm.
council to answer questions. So I'm assuming you'd be considering those when you're developing your arts
Yes,
council.
we will be. Thank you.
Yes, was Shauna part of the Arts Council discussion? that you-
No, Jackie and Sean,
They'll just
yes.
Yeah.
keep talking, okay.
We keep talking.
Yeah.
And I would commend them publicly for the yeoman's work they've been doing.
Absolutely.
Continue to do, it's terrific. Okay, then, so we just have a couple items which aren't as critical, given that we don't have our new appointments yet for the committee. However, I think it's still important. I'm under the impression that we haven't formally recommended to council to change our name to the Community Economic Development Committee. And it was proposed at the time that I joined the Economic Development Committee 2 years ago by Chris Corrigan. And there were a number of new people on the committee at that point, including myself, who didn't know what community economic development was, and it seemed to me, frankly, to be a bit, unimportant. I've completely changed my view on it. I think it's very important. And I think that that maybe as one of our early orders of business this year, that we should make a motion to council to recommend that they change the name of the committee to the Community Economic Development Committee. And that would be a terrific thing to be able to announce at our summit, showing both the province and our community that we are committed to that model of economic development, and start educating as we are at the summit.
Because the theme of the summit, the major theme is community economic development.
Why don't we make the resolution now?
I think we could, and I just wanted to have a little bit of discussion beforehand. I don't think, quite frankly, it will be of benefit to the, to have new members, although, for instance, if any of the people who came as members of the public to our strategy session last meeting do become members of the committee, I think that their types of input that they gave at the strategy session are very much in alignment already with community economic development. So I think it's appropriate that we make the recommendation now.
So it was moved and seconded that the Economic Development Committee recommend to council that the name be changed to the Community Economic Development Committee.
Yeah.
What does Steph have written down?
Similar.
Close.
Do we need to throw, advisory was taken out a few years ago, wasn't it? So we don't need to put that back in.
So,
Shorter and shorter.
I'm not sure how you do C.
Yeah, so-
I can't turn it into an acronym that I
I
can
know.
pronounce.
Yeah,
CD.
Said.
Okay,
Said seeds, planting seeds of change.
Yeah.
So who would like to make the
Well, you?
resolution?
Make the
Okay, I
resolution.
made the resolution.
Second.
Second, Ed. And all in favor? Everyone in favor?
Great.
Great.
Is there any way that could get on the agenda for Monday? Just the recommendation, which would enable us to actually announce it at the
I'm
summit?
assuming
So
Sophie's gonna
Sophie's
be
a little
doing that.
crunchy crunch, but I can just pop a little thing right now.
Just the resolution and,
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
if possible. If
Yeah,
not,
it would be
it's
terrific.
on its
Yeah.
It would be
way.
great.
Yeah.
It would be great.
Okay, I'm just asking her.
Do you have a little 5 lines of why, just in case somebody asks?
Maybe we can clip the video of what I just said. And put
Oh,
that-
the report.
There's
The
something.
PowerPoint that,
Wes,
no, not Wes's.
Lindsay.
Lindsay's
Lindsay.
PowerPoint on the difference between community and
Right.
traditional
That would be
economic
terrific.
development. That
Okay, I
would,
can do that.
that would make it clear. And
Yeah.
Michael was here for that, so Michael would be supportive and
Yeah,
we
I
could
don't,
just
he's
explain.
gonna be phoning in how long we'll have him on the agenda. I'm assuming it's something that could just go on the consent agenda, but in case somebody asks a question and pulls it.
Yeah.
So that was, the document associated with this conversation then is for you guys. It was a brief change made to the TOR last time to amend the number of council members allowed in the committees
Yeah.
to welcome Allison Morris.
Okay.
That's section 3.2.
Sorry, probably a stupid question. What does term memberships are 2 years staggered by 1 year?
So we were trying to make the membership more consistent,
So it didn't all change at once?
like so that the administration is consistent.
I see.
Like time of year when renewals come up during,
Okay.
but we don't want everyone leaving at the same time.
I see, okay.
So
So there's always half new, half
Right,
continuing.
okay, that makes sense.
Okay.
holy mac, 120 seconds.
Excellent.
Wow. Okay,
Wow.
I move we adjourn.
second.
So that